Always remember, in sexual reproduction, two organisms are involved. That is, a male and a female reproductive structure must be there. So once the pollen grains fall on the stigma, they germinate and produce the pollen tube which carries the male gametes towards the ovule. Monoecious means single plant. Bisexual means two sexes in one plant. Hello everyone, a warm welcome to today's session on chapter 1 of 2nd PUC, that is Reproduction in Organisms. I am Dr. Divya, Biology Faculty, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Mysuru, Temple of Excellence. So in the previous session of this chapter, we had discussed about the different forms of reproduction, wherein we understood that there is two forms of reproduction, which is asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. And we discussed in detail about the different types of asexual reproduction. In today's session, let us discuss about the sexual reproduction. So to begin with, sexual reproduction, it involves the formation of male and female gametes. So here, two organisms need to be involved, unlike the asexual reproduction wherein one organism itself was capable of producing the offspring. But here, two organisms, a male and a female, are needed, and the fusion of the male gamete and the female gamete should occur if the reproduction has to take place. So, either it can be by the same or different individuals of the opposite sex. So, the gametes later on, that is the male gamete and the female gamete, they fuse together to form a zygote. The zygote later on forms an embryo, and the embryo later on develops into a new organism. So, that is how sexual reproduction occurs. So, always remember, in sexual reproduction, two organisms are involved. That is, a male and a female reproductive structure must be there. So, sexual reproduction is grouped into three stages. One is pre-fertilization events, that is, before fertilization occurring. So, before fertilization means, or pre-fertilization means, before the male and the female gametes fuse with each other or fertilize with each other, there are some events that occur in the male and the female gamete. So, those events that occur are put under the pre-fertilization event. So, next is fertilization event. Now, the male gamete is prepared for fertilization, the female gamete is prepared for fertilization. Now, both come together and they fuse. So, when they fuse, fertilization is occurring. So, what happens during that is the fertilization events. Next is post-fertilization events. Once the fusion of the male and the female gamete occurs or fertilization occurs, after fertilization, what all will happen? That is under post-fertilization event. So, each of these events, let us study one by one in detail. So, before moving on to that, first I told you here, the male and the female gametes are involved. So, therefore, understanding the sexuality of an organism is very, very important before moving on to the three stages or events that occur during the sexual reproduction. So, talking about sexuality in plants. So, plants can be either bisexual or unisexual. So, bisexual. So, remember here, plants are bisexual, but they are monoecious. Monoecious means single plant. Bisexual means two sexes in one plant. So, what happens? Say for example, I have a plant A. In the plant A only, the male reproductive organ is present and the female reproductive organ is present. Now, is the plant monoecious? It is monoecious, right? Why? Because only one plant is involved here. One plant, that is plant A. In that plant A only, so which is the reproductive structure in a plant? The flowers, right? So, in that one flower only, the male reproductive structure, that is the anther, and the female reproductive structure, that is the gynoecium, will be present. So, therefore, here you might ask me, now only one plant is involved. Why are you considering it under sexual reproduction? Because though only one plant is involved here, both the gametes are involved, right? Male reproductive part is also there, female reproductive part is also there, which you don't find in asexual reproduction. So therefore, the plant is monoecious. Again, don't get confused. The plant is monoecious. That is, a single plant is involved here. But in that single plant's flower itself, both male reproductive part is also there, female reproductive part is also there. Therefore, bisexes are present in one single plant. Therefore, bisexual and monoecious is one form of sexuality in plants. So, plants here will have both male and female reproductive structures in the same plant itself. Next is unisexual or dioecious. Unisexual, again here, only if the male reproductive structure is there will fertilization occurs, not possible. Only female reproductive structure is there if fertilization will occur, not possible, right? So therefore here, both male and female reproductive structure should be there. But where is it present? It is present in two plants. Say for example, I have taken plant A and plant B. How many plants are involved? Two plants. Therefore it is dioecious, right? So it is dioecious. Now, in plant A, male reproductive structure might be there. In plant B, female reproductive structure is there. So now, this is unisexual, right? Because in plant A, only one reproductive structure is there. That is male reproductive structure. It is unisexual. In plant B, also only one reproductive structure is there. That is female reproductive structure. Therefore, unisexual. But how many plants are involved here? Two plants. Now, you might have understood the difference between monoecious and dioecious. Monoecious, in one plant only, both male and female reproductive structure is there. Therefore, it is bisexual monoecious. In dioecious, two plants are involved, wherein one plant will have male reproductive structure, one plant will have female reproductive structure. Therefore, it is unisexual dioecious. So, plants will have male and female reproductive structures in different plant, and unisexual male flowers are called as staminate. Now, this is called as staminate. So, what is staminate? Staminate. So, staminate means those which produce stamens. So, stamens are androecium, right? Stamens are, they are consist of anthers, right? So, they are the male reproductive structure. So, those flowers or plants having male reproductive structures are called as staminate, and those which female flowers which have female reproductive structure, that is gynoecium, is called as pistillate. So, unisexual female flower bearing pistil is called as pistillate. Unisexual male flower bearing, that is stamens, is called as staminate. So, therefore, two plants are involved here. One is staminate flower is involved. From one more plant, the pistillate flower is involved. The best example that I can take of is papaya. Papaya plants, they are unisexual in nature. They are dioecious and they are unisexual in nature, because in papaya plant, the male plant is separate, female plant is separate, and the male, if you grow the male and the female plant at one place, then only the fertilization is possible. So that is one example for unisexual or dioecious plants. And majority of the angiosperm flowering plants, they are bisexual in nature. So next, let us study about the sexuality in animals. So far we studied about the sexuality in plants, wherein plants exhibit two types of sexuality, that is unisexual or dioecious, bisexual or monoecious. So talking about sexuality in animals, they can be unisexual and they can be bisexual. So unisexual means the individuals can either have only male or female reproductive structure in them. We are unisexual animals, right? We don't have humans. We are unisexual. We have only, the males will have the male reproductive structure, the females separate, they'll have the female reproductive structure. So that is why individuals which have either male or female reproductive organ are called as unisexual animals. So here, example that we have taken of is cockroach and leech. So cockroaches and leech, they exhibit unisexuality. So if you can see here, I've taken the example of cockroach, wherein you can see the male reproductive structure. So this is the male and we have the female part of the cockroach. So they are unisexual in nature. Why? Because the male is present somewhere and that is in a different organism, and the female reproductive structure is present in a different organism. So cockroaches and leech are one of the best examples for unisexual animals. Next, talking about bisexual animals, that is hermaphrodites. So in hermaphrodites are those organisms in which bisexual means both the sexes will be present in the same organism, right? So therefore here these organisms have both the male and the female reproductive organs in one organism itself. So these are bisexual organisms, or in other terms they are also called as hermaphrodites. So next, because we know about the sexuality in organism, we know about unisexual organisms, we know about bisexual organisms, both in the case of plants and the animals. Now it will be easy for us to understand about the fertilization events. So let us study about the different events that occur during sexual reproduction. So I told you in sexual reproduction is divided into 3 events. One is pre-fertilization events, the second one is the fertilization event, the third one is the post-fertilization event. So let us study about each of these one by one. So talking about the first event, that is pre-fertilization event. Before the fertilization occurring, before the fusion of the male and the female gametes occurring, what all events will occur? All that is the pre-fertilization events. So all events that occur before the fusion of gametes come under the pre-fertilization event. Pre-fertilization events are of 2 main types. One is gametogenesis and the other one is gamete transfer. If fertilization has to occur, if the events has to enter into a fertilization stage, then first process is gamete should be formed, right? That is gametogenesis. Once the gametes are formed, the gamete should be transferred. So therefore, the gametogenesis or the gamete formation and the transfer of the gametes, both of these come under the pre-fertilization events. So let us study about each of these one by one. First is, if fertilization has to occur, gamete should be formed. That is gametogenesis. Genesis means formation of something new. What new is being formed here? Gametes. Gametogenesis. So it is the process of formation of 2 gametes. So one here male gamete and the other one is female. Obviously both are involved because it is a sexual mode of reproduction, right? So here the gametes are haploid. That is, they are N in number, N chromosomes. They have N number of N. They are haploid in nature and the gametes are categorized again into 2 types. So here the gametes are haploid and the gametes are of 2 types. One is homogametes and the other one is heterogametes. So homogametes are also called as isogametes. Heterogametes can also be called as anisogametes. So homo. Always remember, when the word homo comes in biology, homo means it is same. Hetero means in biology it is different. So what did we understand from this? Homogametes means same type of gametes are produced. Heterogametes, different types of gametes are produced. So let's study about homogametes and heterogametes here. So homogametes, they are also called as isogametes. So 2 gametes are similar in appearance. That is, we are not able to distinguish very easily which is the male gamete and which is the female gamete here. So it is not possible to distinguish between male and female gamete. So example we can take of is algae. So if you can see here algae, can you differentiate between the male and the female gamete? It is very, very difficult because both the gametes look exactly the same here. So that is why they are called as homogametes. Next, talking about heterogametes. So heterogametes that are produced, they are morphologically different. Morphologically means externally, when you look at them, easily you can differentiate between them. So here we have the female gamete and this is the male gamete. And also we can take the example of we human beings. In human beings, the ovum and the egg, we can differentiate, right? Sorry, the ovum or the egg and the sperm, we can differentiate. So this is the ova, or it is also called as egg, and this is the sperm. Now, because morphologically both are completely different, we can say that this is female gamete, this one is male gamete. So therefore, easily by looking at them itself, we can differentiate easily between the male and the female gamete because they have a lot of morphological differences here. So in this particular case, male gametes are called as anthrozoids, that is sperm, and the female gametes are called as ovum or egg. So this is about heterogametes. So gametes are of two types, one is homogametes and one is heterogametes. We were talking about the post-fertilization events, wherein the first event that occurs in post-fertilization is the formation of gametes, that is gametogenesis. In that, two types of gametes can be formed depending on the organism. They can be homogametes or they can be heterogametes. Heterogametes, we human beings are best example for heterogametes. Algae is a best example for homogametes. Next step is, that is gamete formation or gametogenesis. How does the formation of these gametes, that is the male and the female gamete, occur? We shall look into. So for that, the cell division has to occur. So let us learn about the cell division during the gamete formation. So in heterogametic species, so what are heterogametic species? Heterogametic species are the organisms that are capable of producing two different types of gametes which can be easily distinguished, that is the male gamete and the female gamete. So in heterogametic species, there are two types of gametes, that is male and female gamete. So the gametes here are haploid. As I told you, they are haploid in nature, and haploid means they'll have only 23 chromosomes. Usually how many chromosomes are present in humans? 46, right? So haploid means half of the chromosomes they'll have, 23 chromosomes, so 23 pairs of chromosomes. So here the gametes are haploid, though the parent body from which they may arise may be haploid or diploid. Say for example, the parent body, even if it is diploid, so this is the parent, or even if it is haploid. Parent, either if it is haploid or diploid, whatever the condition may be, the gamete that will be produced will always be haploid in nature. Means only half of the chromosome will be carried to the gamete. So that is how it is. So if haploid gametes have to be produced by haploid parents, then mitotic division has to occur, and if diploid gametes have to be produced by diploid parents, then meiosis has to occur. Why? Because here mitosis and meiosis, because here 23 chromosomes should be present. So here in diploid gamete, so this is a diploid gamete, right? So this is a diploid parent. Diploid parent means 2n. How many chromosomes will be present? 46. But the gamete is haploid. Can 46 chromosomes be carried? No. How much should be carried? 23. So therefore, what type of division, cell division should occur? Meiosis. Why meiosis? Because meiosis means, so here meiosis cell division should occur. Why meiosis? Because meiosis means it is reduction division, right? So that is why. Next, talking about haploid parent. So if the parent is haploid, how much chromosome will be there? 23. Now can half of the chromosome, so if here again meiosis occurs in this, how much chromosomes will be there? 23 divided by 2. Can the chromosome divide like that? No, right? So therefore here also if 23 chromosomes has to occur, then the division should be mitotic, that is equational division. If the parent is having 23, then the gamete is also having 23. So now you might have understood. So therefore, if haploid gametes have to be produced by haploid parents, mitotic division should be seen. So here mitosis should occur. So here mitosis should occur. And in this particular case, meiosis will occur. And if diploid parents are involved in the gamete formation, then meiosis should occur. Because 46 chromosomes cannot be carried to the gamete, 24 chromosomes has to be carried. Therefore, meiosis division or reduction division should occur. But in haploid gamete, if meiosis division occurs, what happens? 23 will get reduced to half, which is not correct. So therefore, if the parents are haploid, then the offspring will also have, or the gametes that are produced by the parents will also be haploid. How? Because of mitotic division, because of equational division. So this is how the cell division occurs during gamete formation. Especially if it is if diploid parents are involved, then meiosis will occur. If haploid parents are involved, then mitosis will occur. So always keep this in mind. And in diploid organisms, some specialized cells called myocytes are there which will undergo meiosis. And when meiosis division ends, only one set of chromosome gets incorporated into each gamete. As I told you, what is the parent? Parent is diploid. Parent is diploid. So, diploid means how many chromosomes? 46 chromosomes will be there. Now, can the 46 chromosomes be carried to the offspring? No. So, therefore, carried to the gametes? Gamete. How much? What is a gamete? Male and female gamete. So, gamete how much will be there? So, gamete should undergo meiosis. Why meiosis? Because it is reduction division. So, reduction division means 46 will become 23. So, reduction division means 46 chromosomes will become 23 chromosomes. Therefore, it will become haploid. So, that is how, because gametes need to be haploid. Whatever the parents may be, they may be diploid or haploid or whatever the parents may be, gametes need to be haploid. So, therefore, when meiosis division ends, only one set of chromosome, right, here two sets were there. Therefore, 23 into 2, 46 was there. Now, here only one set of chromosome is carried to the gamete. Out of the two chromosomes, two pairs of chromosomes, only one out of that will be carried to the gamete. So, therefore, resulting in 23 chromosomes or haploid condition in the gamete. So, this is about how cell division occurs during gamete formation. And in haploid, what happens? Again, I'll tell you. In haploid, say for example, if the parent is haploid. Parent is haploid. Now, here haploid means how many chromosomes? 23 chromosomes, right? So, here in the gamete, now can mitosis occur? In the gamete now, can meiosis occur during cell division? Can be meiosis? What will happen if meiosis occurs? So, 23 divided by 2, somewhere about 11.5 chromosomes will enter into the gamete. Can it be possible 11.5 chromosome? What will happen if there is a half chromosome? It will lead to mutation and all that, right? So, therefore, what happened? To avoid that, mitosis will occur. So, when mitosis occurs, what will happen? Same 23, it is equational division. So, same 23 chromosomes will get carried to the offspring. So, therefore, 23 means it is again haploid. So, this is how cell division occurs during the gamete formation. Next, moving further. So, this was about gametogenesis. Now, we understood the different types of gametes that are involved in pre-fertilization events. Now, we need to know the how cell division occurs in gamete formation, and we understood now whatever the parent might be, whether the parent is diploid or haploid, the gametes will always be haploid in nature. Now, we know about the gametes in detail. So, how do these gametes get transferred? So, we shall study about gamete transfer. So, after the formation of the male and the female gamete, so male and female gamete, they are haploid. They come together for fusion. When they come together for fusion, then they become a diploid. Because why? The chromosomes that are carried to the offspring should be 46. It cannot be 23. So, that is why. So, after the formation of male and female gamete, they come together for fusion. And majority of the organism, the male gamete is motile and the female gamete is stationary. That is true, right? Say for example, we'll take the example of human beings. Will the egg travel towards the sperm? No, right? The sperm will enter into the female reproductive system and then it will travel towards the egg. The egg will be stationary in the ovary, right? It will not move. So, therefore, it is only the male gamete, that is the sperm, that is motile, and the female gamete, for example, the ova or the egg, it is non-motile in nature or it is stationary in nature. And in few fungi and algae, both the male gamete and the female gamete will be motile. And these motile gametes always they travel through a medium such as water. So, some of the fungi and the algae and all that, both the male gamete and the female gamete, they travel towards each other. Both can move and then they come at a particular point and then they fuse. And for this movement of the male and the female gamete to occur, they will require a medium which is nothing but water here. So, when the water is not available, they will go off to a dormant state. So, that is different. We had studied in the case of amoeba, right? So, that is different. So, here we need to understand the gametes, both the gametes can be motile, or only the male gamete can be motile and the female gamete can be stationary. Next, in some cases, the male gamete may fail to reach the female gamete. So, in order to compensate the loss, what happens? Thousands of male gametes are produced. Say, for example, we human beings. Will only one sperm be produced? No, right? In male, thousands of sperms will be produced. In that thousands of sperms, they'll compete with each other and only one sperm will be able to go and fertilize. So that is why, because sometimes the male gametes may fail to, all the male gametes may fail to reach the female gamete. That is why in nature, to avoid such problems, thousands of male gametes will be produced, wherein one male gamete out of the 1,000 can go and at least one can go and reach the female gamete. So that is why. In seed plants, the male gametes are carried to the ovule of the female plant by the pollen grain. So where are the pollen grains produced? Say for example, we have the anther. So this is the anther. Anther is the male reproductive structure. In the anther, what is produced? Pollen grains are produced, right? So these are the pollen grains. Now, these pollen grains need to be carried to the female reproductive part. Which is the female reproductive part? It is the stigma. It has to travel to the stigma. So, this is the gynoecium. Gynoecium. Then we have the stigma. So, from the anther, the pollen grains will come out. These pollen grains should fall on the stigma. So, once they fall on the stigma, what is there in the pollen grain? The male gamete will be there, because it has come from the male reproductive structure, right? Male gamete will be there. This male gamete, so inside the pollen grain, what is there? Male gametes are there. Now, these male gametes has to travel through the stigma style and it has to reach the ovary. So, that is how the movement will occur in the case of plants. So, in seed plants, the male gametes are carried to the ovule. So, this is the ovule inside the ovary. They are carried to the ovule of the female plant by the pollen grain. So, the pollen grains, what they do is, they'll actually, that are produced by the anthers, are transferred to the stigma before fertilization. Now, that is how gametes get transferred in the case of plants. So, in the case of that is humans and all that, gametes, they get that is female gamete will be stationary, male gamete will travel towards it. And here also the female gamete is stationary, it is the male gamete that is transferring through it. But how is the male gamete carried? Male gametes are carried in structures called as pollen grains. These pollen grains will go and fall on the stigma. That pollen grain will burst open, it will produce the pollen tube, and through that pollen tube, the male gamete will reach the ovule. In the ovule, what is there? The egg cell is there. It will fuse the egg cell and it will form the seed. So, that is how fertilization occurs. So, the pollen grains that are produced in the anthers are transferred to the stigma before fertilization. Now, the transfer of pollen grains is relatively easy in the case of self-fertilizing plants, as the anthers and stigma are located close to each other. Now, plants can undergo fertilization in two ways. One is self-pollination and the other one is cross-pollination, or self-fertilization and cross-fertilization. So, in self-fertilization, what happens is, say for example, we have a flower A. So, self-fertilization can usually be seen in bisexual flowers. Why? Because in one flower only, both male and female reproductive structure will be present. So, for example, flower A. In this flower A only itself, male reproductive structure and female reproductive structure is there. Therefore, in one flower itself, anther is also there, stigma is also there. Therefore, from the anther to the stigma, easily the pollen grains can get transferred. So, therefore, fertilization is very easy in self-pollinated flowers. The transfer of pollen grains to the stigma, but in the case of cross-pollinated flowers, say for example, cross-pollinated flowers usually occurs in unisexual flowers, or it can also occur in bisexual. It's not that it should not occur, but usually in unisexual flowers. But in unisexual flowers, self-pollination will not occur. Why? Because two different plants are there, flower A and flower B. In flower A, male reproductive structure is there. In flower B, female reproductive structure is there. So therefore, from flower A, the pollen grain has to travel towards flower B. Now, how can it travel? It has to travel by a method called as pollination. So therefore, the transfer of pollen grains to the stigma requires a process called as pollination in the case of cross-pollinating plants, as the anther and stigma are located in flowers of separate plants. So that is what I explained. So once the pollen grains fall on the stigma, they germinate and produce the pollen tube which carries the male gametes towards the ovule. So what happens now? This is the stigma, then we have the style, then we have the gynoecium, or this is the ovary. What is there inside the ovary? Inside the ovary, ovules are there. These are the ovules. Now the pollen grain has fallen on the stigma. It will germinate to produce the pollen tube. What is there inside this? Male gametes are there. These male gametes will travel through the pollen tube and it will enter into the ovule. So the male gamete will travel like this and it will enter into the ovule. So that is how the transfer of the male gamete towards the female gamete occurs in the case of plants, be it self-pollination or be it cross-pollination. But self-pollination doesn't require pollination, but cross-pollination will require pollination process. So this was about gamete transfer. So this was about, just we had studied the pre-fertilization event. So what all happened in the pre-fertilization event? In the pre-fertilization, we studied gametogenesis. That is how gametes are formed. In the gametes, there are two types, homogametes and heterogametes, all that we studied. Then after the gamete formation, how exactly, that is in gamete formation, we studied the cell division that occurs during gamete formation. And we understood that even though if the parent is haploid or diploid, the gametes will always be haploid. So therefore, diploid parents will undergo meiosis to produce haploid gametes. Haploid parents will undergo mitosis to produce haploid gametes. So all that we had studied. And after the gametes have been produced, now how do the gametes get transferred? How does the male gamete gets transferred towards the female gamete? All that we had studied. So this was about the pre-fertilization event. So in the next session, we shall study about the fertilization events. So what exactly is fertilization and where does fertilization occurs? And what happens exactly during the process of fertilization, what are the different events that occur during the fertilization process, and also after that, after the fertilization, what are the events that occurs, that is the post-fertilization events. All that we shall study in the coming session. So this was about the session. So I hope you understood this session. We shall meet again in the coming session. Thank you.